When it comes to quality sleep, Ashley has you covered with top mattress brands at winning prices and with special financing options available. You can snooze now and pay later. Plus, your mattress purchase helps give the gift of better sleep to children in need and U.S. Special Operations Forces. Visit your local Ashley store or shop online today and make every snooze count. Financing is subject to credit approval. See store or ashley.com for details.
Dreaming of overseas adventures or connecting more deeply with family from afar? Rosetta Stone bridges the language gap.
I've tried others, but Rosetta Stone's immersive lessons and voice feedback technology are game changers.
Dive into 25 languages by learning intuitively, just like when you were a kid. And here's the holiday sparkle. Grab a lifetime membership now and save 50%. Gift yourself the world. Head to rosettastone.com now and save 50%.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a guy that likes going to the movies almost as much as Pee Wee Herman. He is the captain.
Well, I know you are, but what am I? Thanks for listening. It's good to be seen. Well, again, it's, I guess it's not good to be seen with my pants down. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks for telling a friend.
Tonight we are drinking We Don't Need No Stinking Coast by the hardworking people at 6 Cents Brewing Company in Jackson, Ohio. Garage grade 4 out of 5 bottle caps. We Don't Need No Stinking Coast is super hazy double IPA brewed in that East Coast style. And like I said, they got a low hop, high citrus thing going on here.
And this beer is brought to us by some of our favorite True Crime Army members.
First up, we have Jennifer in Old Nasty Jim Harbaugh country. She is in Jerome, Michigan. Jennifer says she can't believe she is so late to the party, but she loves True Crime Garage despite that we record in Columbus.
Oh, so well, she's a nasty girl.
Yeah, she's a Wolverine diehard.
Ugh.
I hate to spoil everyone's fall, but the Buckeyes will win the division this year. Next, in parts unknown, we raise our glasses to Kevin and Amy.
And we also have Barbara in Woodbridge, Virginia.
Next, we have Erica in Kansas, and I really want to thank Erica for sending this to us. Erica says, if you live in the greater Kansas City area, there's a foundation put together by family members of a murder victim, and that foundation offers free defense training classes for girls. So to learn more about that, go to takedefense.org.
And a big we like your jib to Heidi in Albuquerque. We like your jib.
Next, we have Sarah from the city with a heart of gold, Timmins, Ontario. And last but not least, we have Jennifer in Fairport, New York. Jennifer says she loves the back-to-back 2-part episodes each week, but she would like to know when we're going to do 5 episodes a week.
We're thinking in like 2024 is the date we're shooting for to start 4 episodes a week.
Yeah,
2024.
So don't hold your breath.
Thanks for donating to the beer fund. You can do so at truecrimegarage.com. Click on the donate banner.
And if we haven't read your name or gave you a shout out yet, just keep in mind we are way behind. We're thankfully way behind. Everybody's been very generous. So we will get to you soon, my friends. Very soon.
And for everything True Crime Garage, you can check out our website, truecrimegarage.com. Go to the store page. Check out, we got some old episodes. If you're not caught up on the first, like 1 through 40, get caught up. Also, we have the bonus episodes, the Brick of Family Murder that we just put out. It was #1 on iTunes. Can't beat that.
And don't forget, Captain, on the store page, we have our selection of t-shirts on there as well.
Yeah, and we ship them all out ourselves. I mean, we package them and we do all the shipping. So, when you get your shirt, I have touched that shirt.
Causing it to go down in value, of course. Anyway, that's enough of the business, Captain. Everybody gather around, grab a chair.
Grab a beer.
Grab a beer and talk some true crime. On the evening of May 16th, 2005, in the town of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, the sheriff's department, they find the lifeless bodies of 3 people inside of the Groney McKenzie household. They find both of the adults as well as a teenage boy. His name is Slade Groney. Now, we have 2 missing children here, 9-year-old Dylan and 8-year-old Shasta. It takes about 7 weeks, but Shasta is located in a Denny's restaurant with a strange man in the middle of the morning. Now, this would be July 2nd. On Sunday, July 3rd, the man that was with Shasta was identified as Joseph Duncan III.
Yeah, so who is Joseph Duncan? Joseph Duncan is 42 years old. He's a white male. He's a registered sex offender, and he's from Fargo, I believe.
Yeah, Fargo, North Dakota. Now, they are holding him because they want to charge him with 2 counts of kidnapping. Charges that in that state, if you're convicted, they come with possible sentences of life in prison or possibly the death penalty. Now, it's time for detectives to question young Shasta, and they need a lot of information from this little girl. Mm-hmm. You know, where had the man taken her? Where was she for 6-7 weeks? What happened that night at the Groney McKenzie home? And, of course, where is Shasta's brother, Dylan?
That's the first question you should be asking.
Well, and, of course, we have this situation here, Captain, where Joseph Duncan, he does not appear that he's willing to talk with the sheriff's department. So, as we said, they're going to have to learn this information from Shasta. And some of what Shasta knew and understood about the crimes, Shasta actually learned from Duncan himself.
Okay.
Duncan told her several times about details of the murders of Shasta's family. And he was, and furthermore, what he was doing to Dylan while they were out on the run, let's say. Duncan told Shasta that he was turned on when he had spotted her and Dylan in the front yard. He was driving around. We can assume probably looking for a victim or looking to victimize somebody. He states that he sees the 2 of them in the front yard. He's turned on by the young girl. She's wearing a bathing suit at the time when he sees them. This is when he decides that he was going to take the little boy and take the little girl. Okay. Now, Duncan told her that he had watched the house and the family for a couple of days. He's not specific on how many days these were. But he says that he would creep up to the windows at night when the lights were out. And he had night vision goggles that he brought with him on this trip. And he would creep up to the windows when the lights are out, when the family is sleeping, and he was looking in the window so he could get an accurate layout of the inside of the home because he was planning his attack.
Right.
And he was waiting for the right time to strike. Well, on the night of the murders, there's a couple of different reports here, and I think maybe the confusion is where was Dylan, where was Shasta? But the way that the story goes is that at some point on the night of the murders, Shasta's mother, Brenda, she came into her room and asked her to come out into the living room. Shasta was asleep at this point. And then she calls out to Dylan, and Dylan then joins them in the living room as well. Now, Shasta says that when she got there, that this is the first time she sees this strange man. She's never seen him before. And he's in the living room with her family members. At this point, Mark McKenzie is already bound and he's on the ground. And then we also have Slade, who is bound just with the hands, but he's on the floor as well. Then it's at this point that the strange man, he ties up Shasta's mother, Brenda. Mm-hmm. The man, she says, is wearing dark clothing and he's wearing dark gloves, black gloves.
So after Duncan has the 2 adults and the 1 teenager bound, he's going to then take the 8 and 9-year-old, bound them up, and then bring them out to a pickup truck that he has parked in their, I'm guessing, their driveway.
Yeah, he has it parked somewhere on the property. He puts them in the pickup truck, and then he goes back inside. Now, Shasta says that the kids in the pickup truck, they heard several screams coming from the house after Duncan had returned, but eventually the night went silent. Eventually they hear nothing else coming from the inside.
Right.
She does say that at one point that Dylan and Shasta, that she saw her older brother Slade walk outside, and then he walked back inside again. When Shasta reported this to authorities, she said that her brother Slade was already extremely bloody at this point when he walked outside and then returned. And in her words, he was probably brain dead at this point.
Wow.
Then they see Joseph Duncan come out of the house, and he drove the pickup truck over to the neighbor's property and then took the kids from the pickup truck and he placed them into a red Jeep Cherokee, and they drove off. Now, later, Joseph Duncan told both Dylan and Shasta that on the night of the murders, he had parked the Cherokee on Robert Hollingsworth's property after dark, and he walked over to the Mackenzie Groney property. Duncan had brought several items with him, including the duct tape, the zip ties. He also brought a flashlight and a rifle and a claw hammer. Once on the property, he was actually confronted by the family's dogs outside. He had aimed the gun at both of them, and they were disturbed by this, and they ran off. And then he discovered that the side door to the house was unlocked. He let himself in and then made his way to look for the adult man in the house. Apparently, after he had the victims tied up is when he got the keys for that pickup truck. He got the keys for the pickup truck from Mark Mackenzie himself after he had tied him up.
Right. So after they're in the red Jeep Cherokee, where does he take the two kids?
Well, apparently Joseph Duncan had shown Shasta on a map where he took the two children. And so just days after Shasta is found, she's able to show authorities that her and her brother Dylan, they were held at two different camping areas. One of the two, this is an area in the northwest part of Montana, only about a 2-hour drive east from the Groney Mackenzie home where the two children were taken from. Now, law enforcement searched this area. This is a remote area near St. Regis, Montana. And on July 10th, 2005, they announced that they had located and recovered the remains of Dylan Groney. There were many, many rumors regarding the boy's death and what Shasta and Dylan had experienced while being held captive. All of the newspapers, news outlets, and magazine TV shows were discussing these rumors.
Like we said, though, before, I mean, Joseph Duncan is a registered sex offender. Now we know what the motive was, and we know that he had these two children in a remote location. So we know what his motive is.
Yes, we know he took them for sexual purposes. He molested them, and he did things to both of them for several weeks. Like I said, what we do know is that Dylan died from a gunshot. It was a gunshot to the head. Like I said, there were many rumors regarding his death and what Shasta witnessed or was forced to participate in. I don't really want to go through all of the rumors. I mean, there's a lot of them, and they're pretty grim. But there are two that I will go through because I find these to be likely scenarios. One rumor was that Dylan was dismembered after his death. And this could be likely. They identified the remains, and the method to do that was using DNA testing. And it is possible that wasn't their preferred method, but that it was a necessity.
Necessity, right?
Right, because of the way the remains were found, that the only way to identify them.
And it could have been one of the ways that Duncan was trying to cover his tracks.
You're exactly right. The other, and I apologize, but this is not as bad as some of the other rumors that were being reported at the time. But one rumor was that the attacks on the boy were very similar to one of Duncan's earlier assaults. For one of the reasons why he was a registered sex offender.
Right.
It was similar to one of the crimes that he had committed in his past.
Okay, so what's the loose background on this Joseph E. Duncan?
Okay, so while he is, like we said, they're wanting to press charges for kidnapping on him. Now we found the body of Dylan. One thing that I like that the FBI and the sheriff's department did in this investigation and did in this case, even once they had apprehended Joseph Duncan, they weren't quick to rush to anything. They understood that, we've recovered all the victims. We've recovered one of them, thankfully, alive. We have a survivor. Right. And now we have the guy that we believe 100% committed this crime completely by himself. They wanted to do their due diligence and rule out that Joseph Duncan had no connection to the family. And so they're sitting on everything they need. I think that they did it the right way to take it one step at a time. Now, during this time, they want to learn everything they can about Joseph Duncan III.
Right, and we already know because of these acts that he's a flaming pile of horse shit.
So his past, Captain, and his previous crimes, Duncan was born in 1963. It sounds like his family moved around from time to time because of his father's career in the military. However, most reports show that Joseph, he was mostly raised in Tacoma, Washington. There are some conflicting reports regarding the family itself. He was one of 5 children, and one of his brothers states that they had a very normal childhood. There was no abuse in the household growing up, where he has a sister that says the complete opposite, that there was a very abusive setting and that there was all kinds of problems going on.
Physical, emotional, mental.
It sounds
sexual.
It sounds like mostly physical and emotional type abuse is what she describes. But again, she describes a completely different picture than what was painted by the brother. So who knows what was going on? But in 1978, at this point, Joseph would be at the age of 15. He molested a 9-year-old boy at gunpoint. And I don't think he was ever caught for this. I think he actually reported this incident to a psychiatrist later in life. The following year, Joseph stole a car, and he led police on a car chase, and he was caught when he attempted to bust through a police barricade. For this crime, he gets sent to a juvenile detention center. It is here that he confided in therapists that he had raped and molested some boys. And he estimated that he had sexually assaulted 13 boys that were younger than him by the time he was 16. In 1980...
But they're going to charge him with these.
No, he says this to a therapist when he's serving time in the detention center.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about, and I'll post it on Instagram, to me it's one of the creepiest photos of this whole case is, Joseph E. Duncan. I mean, he looks little, and then right in front of him, black and white sex offender. So he gets charged as a sex offender at some point.
Right. And this takes place from an incident in 1980. This is after having been released from juvie. So now Joseph decides to break into a home. This is a home in his neighborhood. He says that there's an old man there that he knew he had several guns and ammunition. He wanted to break into the home and steal the guns. So he does so. And it's a little bit similar to the murders that he would go on to commit later in life, where he would go up and he would peek in the window of this home and he waited for his moment to strike. He said that he basically hid in the shadows and broke into the home where he believed nobody could see him. He steals the gun, he steals some ammo. And after this, he decides that, he's kind of riding out this high from breaking into this home. He decides he wants to have some kind of sex, right? So he sees a 14-year-old boy who is walking to school alone. He, using the gun, he abducts the boy and he takes him into the woods and he assaults him. After the assault, Joseph Duncan beat the boy with sticks that he found in the area, and he burned him with a cigarette.
But the kid would live.
Yes. He ends up letting the boy go. He tells, after he's done doing whatever he did, he tells him to run away and not to tell anybody. He threatens him, don't tell anybody. Well, not too long after Joseph Duncan...
Yeah, asshole. I'm not going to tell anybody.
Well, yeah, Joseph Duncan goes home, and not too long after the attack, he's actually picked up by police for that crime. He's charged and convicted for that crime.
Good for the victim.
Yes, and they sentenced Joseph Duncan to 20 years in prison. Well, he was released 14 years later with several stipulations. One, that he live in a halfway house, and he was on parole, and he was to have no contact with minors. He would continue to be in and out of jail and halfway houses for some time. I don't want to bog down the show and go through every little charge, violation, or jail stint.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time you bogged down the show.
But Joseph Duncan basically was in prison from 1980 until 1994. I also do want to point out that he was not labeled. He was labeled as a sex offender, but not labeled as a pedophile because he was young at the time as well. And both he and the victim were less than 5 years apart in age. So that's the cause of that. And then because of a parole violation, he is in prison back in 1997 until the year 2000. After his release in 2000, he moved to Fargo, North Dakota, where he enrolled in college. Per his parole requirements, he had registered as a sex offender when arriving in North Dakota. They have Duncan listed as a level 3 sex offender. Now, what does that mean? Okay.
I'm really confused because you said he didn't have to be because the victim was the same age.
No, he's a sex offender, but according to prison psychiatrists, he's not listed as a pedophile.
Okay.
He's a sex offender, but not a pedophile because they were within 5 years of age.
I should have been paying a little bit better attention.
Wake up.
I'm sorry. I'm here.
Okay, so they have him.
Tardy.
They have him listed as a level 3 sex offender.
Okay.
What does that mean? Joseph Duncan became a level 3 sex offender because his crime included the following: a non-parental kidnapping of a minor and a sexual act committed with the threat of bodily harm or death. So level 3, or tier 3 as more properly called by the sex offender registry, is the highest, meaning the worst level of sex offender there is. Okay, so if prison/jail time is required for the offense, the following must be adhered to upon release. If you are a tier 1 offender, you are required to register as a sex offender for 15 years. If you're a tier 2 offender, you register for 25 years. And a tier 3 sex offender is required to register as a sex offender for life. Okay, right here, I wanted to go through some of the recidivism rates here. The rate that someone previously convicted of a crime later after released often offends again.
Okay.
Here's the thing.
The repeat offender.
Right. And
what's the percentage?
Well, I wanted to go through these rates, and I got to looking into it, and then I decided that we won't do that. And I'll tell you why.
Well, thanks for bringing it up.
No, but I'll tell you why, okay? There have been some very good studies conducted over the years, but as we review them, we will just have a bunch of garage army people going, huh? What are you talking about?
Right.
And so, look.
Like they're currently doing, huh? What's Nick doing? What's Nick talking about?
Look, I looked at it. I looked at the reports for a while, and I know that the listeners are smarter than me, thank God. I had to read the studies 3 times, and then I decided it's too boring. So anyway, the tier 3 sex offenders have the highest rate of recidivism.
All right, so your point is that if you're tier 3, you're more likely to repeat the crime.
Mm-hmm. And we should keep in mind as well that sex crimes are largely unreported.
So even if we had the numbers in front of us, I would strongly argue that the rates are unfair and much lower than what in reality they actually are.
Yeah, very true.
And the thing here, Captain, is that what me and you in the True Crime Garage Army care about is the concern for the return to criminal behavior. And we all know that criminal behavior doesn't always lead to arrest or convictions. But it certainly leads to victims, doesn't it?
Right.
And that's who all of us in the garage here are here to stand up for. So the thing here is, after about 4 years of Duncan being out, we have a complaint against Joseph Duncan.
Well, okay, but he moves and he registers for college.
Yep.
And he's also registered a sex offender.
Yep.
But he's in college now.
Correct.
And he's studying. Do we know what he's studying?
He was studying computers. And he was actually considered a pretty good student, having made the dean's list a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
As much as you and I dislike Joseph Duncan, he can be an intelligent person as far as school goes and as far as books go. Right. Clearly not intelligent enough to try to correct himself and correct his ways after he's been given, obviously, several chances to do so. So after being out for about 4 years, we get this complaint against him. And the complaint goes like this, that on July 3rd, 2004, there were 2 boys playing in a middle school playground. This is in Detroit Lakes community in Minnesota. The boys' ages are 6 and 8 years old. They see a small red car with a male driver pull into the parking lot. Mm-hmm. The man gets out, and apparently he has some kind of video camera with him. He walks to a secluded area of the playground, and he calls the 2 boys over. Once they're there, the man pulled down the pants of one of the boys, and he fondled him. And then he tried to do the same with the other boy, but thankfully was unsuccessful. There's a brief struggle with this boy, and then both of the boys run off. Mm-hmm. And of course, at this point, the man gets in his car, this is Duncan, and he drives off. Well, the boys are able to provide a very good description of the man as well as the car that they saw that day, right? So the Detroit Lakes police, using this information and using the description, they start checking the sex offenders database, and they find Joseph Duncan, who matched not only the description, the physical description given by the boys, but he had a small red car as well. His car matched the description as well. Right. So the kids were shown a photo lineup.
This is an example of the system working.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you. They're shown a photo lineup, and they both successfully pick Duncan from this lineup. Mm-hmm. And because they have all of his information in the database, they're able to go and pick up Joseph Duncan for this crime, speak to him for it, arrest him for it, and eventually charge him with this crime. Now, we will also point out a situation where maybe the system did not work. We'll talk about that right after this quick beer break.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you look forward to the holidays? Maybe you struggle with seasonal blues. This time of year can be a lot, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot, something to look forward to make you feel grounded, and to give you the tools to manage everything going on. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/garage today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/garage.
Rosetta Stone is the language learning program with a lasting impact. I've been using their app to learn French, and it's not just about memorizing words, but actually having real conversations. And it's not just French. They offer 25 languages. Right now, Rosetta Stone has an awesome holiday deal, 50% off their lifetime membership. Every language, unlimited access forever. For anyone keen on diving deep into a new language, check out rosettastone.com. It's a game changer.
You can live out your MasterChef dreams when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Visit Angie.com. You can do this when you Angie that.
All right, welcome back to True Crime Garage.
All right, Captain, we had talked about the system working. Let's talk about where we start to run into problems here. The first problem presents itself. You know, we said that he is going to be arrested and charged for this crime. The problem here, Captain, we have a situation where we have a report. The report of this crime was misfiled or lost somewhere. For whatever reason, Duncan's not going to face any justice here regarding this charge until about 9 months later. So we have an extreme delay in the process.
Right.
And to further that, you know, this crime happened in Minnesota. He's a registered sex offender in North Dakota. But I don't think that that is any excuse here that the court didn't know who they were dealing with, right? This should be easy, in my opinion. You know, we have a level 3 sex offender who, according to these charges, may have reoffended and tried to do so against not one, but 2 children. I believe that Joseph Duncan had either a public defender here, or maybe he had a license, you know, a private attorney at this point, because he did have, Captain, he actually had 2 well-to-do friends. One was a physician, and the other, I believe, he had been in real estate. But regardless, both had made a good living during their careers.
And why are they friends with this scumbag?
Well, let's get into that a little bit. One of these friends, okay, ends up giving Joseph Duncan $15,000. And he says that this is to aid in his defense, or if there was to be a bail, well, it would probably help for both.
Mm-hmm.
But so his attorney, when he's facing these charges, his attorney asked that the bail be reduced. That, you know, typically in a situation like this, we would see a bail that would be set at like $25,000 or more for a crime of this nature with a possible reoffender.
Mm-hmm.
So the attorney for Joseph Duncan tells the judge that Duncan, this is in April, right? April of 2005. So Duncan is due to graduate from college in May. The attorney asks that the bail be set at a reasonable rate so that Duncan can get out of jail and he can attend to his affairs and complete his graduation process.
That's not how the world works.
Right. But the judge ends up agreeing to this, and he sets the bail at $15,000.
Right. How much money did they put in his pocket?
Well,
That's what I want to know.
I don't know about that, but remember we said that Joseph Duncan got that $15,000, that money from his friend. So picture this. We have a level 3 sex offender.
Right.
The bail is reduced to $15,000, and the defendant says, no problem, pulls out his checkbook and he writes a personal check for $15,000, hands it to the bailiff, and boom, he's released into the public.
Right.
Just walking around whistling Dixie. By the way, I heard that check bounced. You know, for that. Can we?
Gotcha.
Can we at least hold someone until the check clears for starters?
Yeah, that should be that should easily be a rule.
Yeah. So back to what the captain was saying, and I'm sure everybody else is scratching their heads.
I'm sorry, but I can just, hey, no problem. No problem. Let me just write you a check for that. All right. Free I go.
It almost, and I hate to joke around over something so serious, but it's as stupid to me as that part in Dumb and Dumber where he opens up the briefcase full of IOUs.
Yeah.
You know, and he picks up one and he's like, $9,000. He's like, yeah, you might want to hold on to that one.
Yeah.
So
Just
anyway,
good as cash.
like the captain said, and like I'm sure all of you out there are scratching your heads by now going, how does this Joseph Duncan guy have any friends at all, especially one that would give him a loan or whatever you want to call it for $15,000? Well, I'm going to go into this, but I want to be clear that a lot of this here is just my opinion. But I believe there's plenty of evidence of this to back some of this up.
I know where you're going.
So Joseph Duncan, at different times in his life, he held many different sexualities. At some points in his life, he was straight, he was gay, he was a cross-dresser.
Mm-hmm. Very ugly cross-dresser.
Yeah, not very good at it. I actually don't believe that he went from feeling one way to another at different points in his life. I believe, as noted in Duncan's prison files, from the time that he was a kid, that he was diagnosed as a sexual psychopath. And I do believe he was actually a pedophile. And this is a person that is a pedophile who would abduct and kill to fulfill his urges. I think that Joseph Duncan could have sex with anything, really, and that he was that he was a constant manipulator of situations that he found himself in.
Okay,
I think if he saw a situation where he could benefit from being homosexual, well, then he was happy to play the part. I think that that's where these friends may have come into play. Heck, one of these guys, just listen to this, okay? One of the guys said to the courts that he thought that Duncan could be rehabilitated with some counseling and that the courts should release Joseph Duncan to him, to his care, where Joseph Duncan could come and live with him, his wife, and his 2 children. Might I add, these children were just of the age that Duncan would have liked. This guy knew that Joseph Duncan was a sex offender. He knew of his sex offender status. He knew of his criminal past and the crimes he was currently being charged with. I tell you what, if I'm married to someone and they say to me, hey, honey, let's let this level 3 sex offender live with us and our kids, it will all work out. Well, I'm going to say no, but I'm also going to say, you know what is a good idea? A vacation. Now, go take one by yourself because me and the kids are throwing your ass out. So pack your suntan lotion.
Mm-hmm.
So Joseph Duncan, he is out now. He's written this check for $15,000.
It's a rubber check.
Mm-hmm. And he's out, and he knows he's going to have to face these charges eventually. And I believe that is what triggered him. I believe that is the trigger that brought on what he called the demons to take him over.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to point out here, when the investigators were looking into his past, when they were looking into Joseph Duncan's background, they learned he was going to school for computer. And they figured out
for computer.
Well, I can't remember. I'm struggling here to remember the exact thing that he was going, but it was for thank you, Captain.
I could just see
for computer.
I get to see the kid going home. He's visiting his parents for like it's Christmas time. Hey, the grandparents ask him, hey, hey, Nick, where are you going to school? Where are you going to college for?
Just say pewter.
Computer. I'm going to school for computer.
I can't. All right. Well, the major's a little more specific than that, but
right.
it involves him going into that line of work.
Thanks for making my day.
So they are convinced that he's going to have some type of online presence, and they track down some resumes that he sent in to different people looking for jobs.
Right.
They actually lock down his apartment. They contact Fargo, North Dakota, and they contact the landlord, and they lock down his apartment so they can go through everything.
Right.
And it's at this point that they discover this Fifth Nail blog that we talked about in the first episode.
Right.
Well, he's the creator of this blog, of this website.
Well, and like you stated before, he talked about offenses that he made prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
And so these would be the offenses, this rubber check that he wrote. These are the offenses that he's talking about on the blog.
Well, and the thing here is, Captain, like I said, he's going to have to face these charges eventually. He, in his mind, he knows he's going back to prison, and probably maybe even for good at this point. I don't know what the rules are on reoffending. But he's going to go away for a long time. He faced 20 years the first time. And I think that this was the trigger that was the demons that he talked about on his blog taking him over. And because he was going back to prison, he snapped and he thought, you know what? I'm going to go out rather than go to prison. I'm going out. I'm going on the run, and I'm going to kill and abduct until they catch me or kill me.
Well, and some of the true crime army they might go against me on this thought, but hear me out. So with killers or even sexual offenders, they a lot of the times talk about the urge. You know, I get this urge to kill. And we'll see it time and time again with different serial killers where they try to fight the urges.
Mm-hmm.
And some serial killers, they don't even try to fight it. And some sexual offenders, they don't even try to fight the urges. But there are some that do. So it's possibly that's kind of what he's talking about too, is with these demons, where it's like, you know, maybe at certain points of his existence, he's tried to fight these urges,
right?
Which he's calling demons. And now that he knows that, you know, there's really no future for him, why fight the demons?
Mm-hmm.
Why not just let them take over?
Yeah. And, you know, not only were they looking into his background, Captain, but, you know, his arrest, when they found him with Shasta, and after they found the body of Dylan, and then they connected him to this triple homicide, they're starting to see this guy's not just a level 3 sex offender. No, this guy is, I mean, one of the worst, right?
He's a serial killer.
He's a serial killer, and he's capable of monstrous things. Well, that's going to lead the FBI to launch a nationwide review of unsolved missing children cases.
Right.
And they wanted to see if he, during the times he was out, you know, who went missing? Where did they go missing from? They started looking at cases that were everywhere as close to like 70 to 100 miles from where he was, all the way to about 700 or 800 miles away from where he was living at the time. They believed that because they had seen it in more than one situation by this point, that he was capable of going to other states to commit these crimes. So he was actually implicated as a possible suspect in several crimes that occurred between 1994 and 1997. This was when he was on parole the first time before he violated his parole and went back to prison. Now, so
a 3-year gap.
Yes.
And who knows what happened then?
Right. And at this time, he would have been in the Seattle, Tacoma, Washington area. He was living in that area when he was free from prison during this 3-year stint. Although he was cleared as a suspect in some of these cases, authorities in California and Washington, they believed that they had enough evidence and believed that Duncan had committed unsolved murders in their jurisdictions. Now, the first one that I want to talk about is a boy by the name of Anthony Martinez. Okay, so on April 4th, 1997, 10-year-old Anthony Martinez, he was playing with friends in the front yard of his home in Beaumont, California. A man approached the group of kids, asking them if they would help him find his missing cat. The boys did not want to help this man. They refused to help him. So the man instead grabs Martinez and he puts a knife to his neck and he threw him into a white 4-door sedan into the back of his car. Well, on April 19th, this is just 15 days later, 1997, after searching for the boy for 2 weeks, his body was found nude and partially decomposed in a California desert ravine and covered in rocks. The investigator said that he had been sexually assaulted and bound with duct tape. Now, this is one reason why they're looking at him. Furthermore, they're looking at Joseph Duncan because a composite sketch was made of the suspect at the time of the crime. Now,
I think this was the one with the army hat, maybe? Army hat and the mustache.
Well, when this crime was committed, they had no leads. And eventually this case goes cold until after Joseph Duncan's arrest in 2005. Well, the thing here is, once they announced that he has an online presence and that he had this blog, well, of course, web sleuthers and everybody else that has a computer that's interested in true crime, they're following the story on CNN and Fox News, and now they're following it on their computers as well. Well, several people noticed that there's quite a bit of similarity between Joseph Duncan and the composite sketch in the Martinez case. So the FBI, and now again with the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they get involved in this case, and they start working with the Riverside County authorities, who are still active in the investigation.
Now that blog was since, they took down the blog.
Yeah. Well, you want to go into that just real quickly? We'll go back to Martinez.
Yeah. Just because at some point they take it down.
Yes, I've read several newspaper articles and magazine articles, online articles. Everyone I've come across says that the website has been taken down. However, I don't know if this. Remember, I said earlier the guy went to school for computer. Well, that's about my understanding of everything as well. So
he went to school for computer.
I've found this website, and I don't know if it's an archive or if it's somebody retelling. I don't fully understand what it is, but you can find it out there. You really, if I found it, that means you don't have to look extremely hard.
From what I was reading, it made it seem like it was taken down at some point. Then they put it back up. Then when they took it down again, somebody had saved all the information, and so then they relaunched it because it was really about them not wanting him to have any control over it or access to it or something like that. Because I think that they do get some computer time in prison. So
yeah, and the thing here is, Captain, he has, when I say he, Joseph Duncan has a similar active blog that has it's the same thing where it's like almost journal entries.
Right.
And a lot of it's talking about his time in prison and things he gets in trouble for in prison, and he talks smack about the wardens and about the judicial system and things like that. The way I understand it, this is an active blog, and it has a similar name to the Fifth Nail. It's something like the Fifth Nail Chronicles or the Fifth Chronicles, something like that. It has a very similar name. Again, you can easily find it if you just look up his name. I will throw out there, maybe don't waste your time because it's a lot of very boring, dry reading. I read through some of it. Like I said, boring stuff. And plus, this guy is a horrible monster. I don't want to spend any time with him.
Well, yeah, and if the colonel says it's boring, it's boring.
So the way that I understand that the current blog works is that he is not actually allowed to write any of it himself, which should be. I applaud that. I don't think I'm all for freedom of speech, but I don't think that people serving life in prison on death row, that they should be just typing away their own newsletter.
Well,
no,
especially people that have crimes against children.
Exactly. So the thing here is, from my understanding, is there's somebody on the outside that operates this for him. That he corresponds with this person. And from time to time, this person posts things on that blog on his behalf.
Well, you got these weirdo rich friends.
Could be. I think it might be a woman. I'm not certain. Anyway, sorry, we got kind of sidetracked there, but you were right to bring that up because people were probably questioning that. So we have this unsolved case of Anthony Martinez, the 10-year-old that disappeared for 2 weeks and then later was found dead. And we have people coming forward stating that there's similarities between Duncan and the composite drawing. Also, remember, the little boy was bound with duct tape.
Yeah.
So authorities were able to, after looking into this, they're able to match Duncan's fingerprints to a partial thumbprint that they found on the duct tape on Martinez's body. Also, it was learned that Joseph Duncan had stolen his girlfriend at the time. He had stolen his girlfriend's car, and that car was a white Chrysler town car, which matched the description of the abductor's car as well.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. During the sentencing, he eventually go to trial for this, for the death of for the death of Anthony Martinez. But during the sentencing phase of the trial, Ernesto Martinez, this is the boy's father, he said, 14 years ago to this day, my son's life was brutally taken by the hands of a monster. I am angry that instead of attending my son's college graduation, I am spending a day at the sentencing for Tony's murderer. As a father, I would love nothing more than to carry out this execution with my own two hands. I know there will be no punishment greater than the special place God has in hell for Joseph Duncan to endure the pain and suffering we've had to experience.
Right.
The Riverside County Superior Court judge, this is David Downing, said, I can say in 31 years involved in the criminal justice system, I have never met a more evil person than Joseph Duncan. And he immediately had the prisoner removed from the courtroom. Then 6 deputies, they lead Duncan out of the courtroom. And during this time, he glances off into the audience with a kind of a dumb smirk on his face as he's facing the audience there.
Yeah, I'll post some of these pictures of him at trial and him like being transferred from prison to trials. Mm-hmm. And you'll see him. He has a bunch of different looks, but there's definitely something wrong with him. I mean, you can just see it in his eyes. It's there's something like just something missing about him.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's some other crimes that they're concerned about as well. The federal...
Oh, hold on. If I wasn't clear, I'll post those on our Instagram at True Crime Garage.
The federal prosecutors also revealed that Joseph Duncan confessed to the murders of Sammy Jo White, 11 years old, and her half-sister, Carmen Cubayas. She's 9 years old. The 2 girls vanished in July of 1996 after leaving the Crest Motel in Seattle. They lived with their mother at this motel, and the family was very poor. The kids would often make a little bit of money panhandling. The exact details of their disappearance are not known. They're completely unknown. But their remains were not found until February of 1998, so less than 2 years later. Now, we said Joseph Duncan confessed to this crime, to these 2 murders, but it sounds like the authorities are in need of much more than whatever Joseph Duncan told them, because he has not been charged with their murders yet.
Okay, answer me this.
Go ahead.
Okay, so think about the Brian Ferguson case from last week.
Right.
You have a story that doesn't make any logical damn sense, right?
Right.
Has no information correctly, but we hand you all the information during the interrogation. Mm-hmm. Now you got this piece of horse shit behind bars, and he's already been. We already know that he, killed 4 people,
right?
And then we charged him with the killing of the boy,
Anthony Martinez. Yeah,
exactly. And now he's confessing to crimes, and law enforcement is going to say, we need more than that.
Well, here's the thing.
I mean, you see what I'm saying?
No.
That's my confusion.
No, and I agree with you, but I think we're talking about the playing field. It's not an even level playing field, right? We have all kinds of different players in this system, and just like any line of work, some of them are very good at their jobs, some of them are very bad at their jobs, some of them care and have basic human decency, and some people don't care and have no human decency. Right. And I think what we're looking at here is I think people involved in, and I know what you're saying. We want to see justice for as many of these victims of Joseph Duncan as possible.
Right.
And how could we not get justice for these 2 little girls when somebody like Ryan Ferguson ends up in prison?
Right. No record.
For nothing. Yeah.
Right.
And he's totally innocent. I see what you're saying. I think what we're seeing, though, is I think in this situation we have prosecutors. These are federal prosecutors. I think they're doing a very good job. I think they know the law and they're working within the confines of that law. I think Joseph Duncan, as I said, is a manipulator. I also think he's a liar. And I think it would be, you probably can't believe anything this guy says. The thing here is, Captain, I wouldn't be shocked if he, in a roundabout way, somewhat confessed. You know what I mean? That he didn't fully come out.
Right.
My understanding of it is, I don't have the confession or what he said to them, but my understanding is that he did not give them enough. he did not give them enough details. He didn't get certain things about the crime right. He basically said where he had abducted the girls from. He didn't recall their names, or at least said in that interview that he didn't remember their names. And I think a lot of evidence was lost because they weren't found until almost 2 years later. So just really a bad situation. Now, regarding Duncan and the crimes, he was convicted by 3 different courts. He has been convicted in Idaho for the kidnapping and the murders regarding the Groney family and Mark McKenzie. In California, he was convicted by a superior court for the kidnapping and murder of Anthony Martinez. He has also been prosecuted at the federal level. So some of these he actually pled guilty to, but he wasn't able to cut a deal like what we see in most cases. He cut a deal to get a life sentence, but the way that this thing was set up was that they knew he was going to get tried at the federal level.
Right.
And it was expected he would receive the death penalty for those crimes. So the way that they worked this thing was he pled guilty at the state level and was given life for some of the murders and for some of the kidnapping charges and all of that stuff. But they delayed the sentencing process for those crimes and those charges, because if he were not to get the death penalty at the federal level, then he would receive the death penalty in Idaho. Now, Joseph Duncan III is currently being held in a maximum security federal prison. This is the United States Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. Now, this is where we keep persons convicted of federal crimes. This is where we keep the worst of the worst. This is where Timothy McVeigh was held and executed. Now, I don't believe that we have a set execution date for Joseph Duncan. Mm-hmm. If someone finds that, please post that at truecrimegarage.com in the blog, because I looked and looked and looked and could not find it.
Right, but on record, they haven't. I don't think they've executed anybody since 2003.
Correct. And so it's been a while, and we need to get that going again. So now, like with somebody with Timothy McVeigh,
you need to get executions going again.
We need to get that thing fired up again. Yeah. With Timothy McVeigh, he was executed extremely fast, right? So on average, a federal death row inmate is usually executed after about 15 years. McVeigh's was only about 4. Joseph Duncan committed these terrible crimes in 2005. He wasn't convicted at the federal level until the second half of 2008. So if we get back on schedule and the math holds up, we would be looking at an execution date of 2023 or early 2024.
Well, I hope you enjoy those death penalty arguments.
You and I have talked about this a little bit before on several different shows. My views and opinions on the death penalty are complex. They're not very black and white. So I don't care to get involved in it here, because it would take us 10 shows for me to explain my opinion on it. But what I mean is,
sounds interesting.
Save yourself the time typing the emails, because
I'm not. You won't read them.
Well, because what I'm saying is, with somebody as bad as Joseph Duncan, he's not a person that I care to discuss whether there should be a death penalty or not. Okay,
right.
This guy's horrible. He videotaped some of the crimes that he committed against Dylan and Shasta. We know he did this. It's definitive. It was him. He's a horrible person. The world will never be a better place because he's here. So let's not get into that debate.
One of my concerns, though, is these rich friends. I mean, these, especially the one that was married with kids and saying, "Oh, release them to me." You're either having sexual relationships with Joseph E. Duncan, or you're part of this pedophilia ring.
And you're right. And that's what I was trying to kind of foreshadow and kind of throw that idea out there without outwardly saying it. But yeah, I think that they were involved in some kind of relationship together, probably a homosexual relationship.
So whether you're for the death penalty or against it, fact of the matter is this horrible monster is behind bars, and he will not have any more victims. And that's a beautiful thing. Another thing, because, it's funny how, we've been doing this show for so long, but so many of these cases are connected.
Right.
And we can reference so many cases, just like the Adam Walsh. I mean, we talked about these crimes being put on America's Most Wanted, which would be with John Walsh. And the sex offender, being registered sex offender, is basically started because of Adam Walsh.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see how they're all connected and how we're growing as a society on some level to try to prevent these.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You when something like this happens, you can sit around and try to blame people if you want, or you can say, how do we grow and how do we learn from this? And is there any possible way that something this terrible, this depressing, that something good could come of it? And one thing I want to give Oprah Winfrey some props there. Yeah, it seems strange, but some people will remember this. In late 2005, this crime, Joseph Duncan being a registered sex offender, he was being sought. He was a fugitive from the law. He was facing these charges in Minnesota.
Right.
So if they could have found him before he committed these murders, we would have a whole family of people that still with us.
Right.
And so this crime inspired her to do. Her and her show did basically what I would call a child molester roundup. This featured different child sex offenders that were wanted by the FBI. It would feature those cases on her show, and the show offered a substantial reward for information leading to the arrest of these individuals that were featured on the show. There was at least two.
Oprah.
Yeah, there was at least two of these guys that were on the FBI's most wanted list for sex offenders that were apprehended because of the Oprah show. So that's one good thing that came of it. The other two is that they increased the child victim recovery funds were increased in Idaho. So at the time, they would allot, I believe it was $2,000 or $2,500 to a child victim for counseling and therapy because of all the trauma they've experienced. The thing here is with Shasta's situation, she's very young. She experienced something extremely horrific. They knew immediately that dollar amount would not even provide the smallest amount of counseling or treatment for her to try to correct and get things back on path for her so that she could live a happy, productive life. So they increased that amount, and I believe they increased it to $25,000. So that was certainly a step in the right direction. And, Captain, for me and you, we do a different crime every week, and I thank everybody for tuning in and listening to the different crimes that we present every week. But sometimes you and I have to go out of our way and look for the good, for the positive in these cases as we get bogged down week after week with some depressing, heavy stuff.
But what's this week's recommended reading?
Walking Prey, How America's Youth Are Vulnerable to Sex Slavery by Holly Austin Smith. This is an important book with one-of-a-kind insight into this subject matter because it was written by a victim. Not only was she a victim, but more importantly, she's a fighter. Her book, Walking Prey, is truly an educational experience for both parents and law enforcement. Holly has been on national TV, newspapers, and radio shows telling her story. She has also consulted for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Amber Alert program. So pick up Holly's book about a crime that is not well understood by most of us. That is Walking Prey, How America's Youth Are Vulnerable to Sex Slavery by Holly Austin Smith. And you can do that by going to our website, truecrimegarage.com, and we have our recommended page. And you can pick up anything from that page on our Amazon app.
Yeah, if you click through the banner, and whatever you buy, they give us a kickback, and they don't charge you anything. It helps keeps the lights on, helps keep some beer in the fridge. And I think Nick had a couple too many beers this episode.
Yeah, well, I'll do what I want. I've done a lot of talking, so my tongue is not working with the rest of the mouth at this point.
Well, you did a fine job on the research this week, my friend.
Well,
like
thank
always,
you, Captain.
And really interesting stuff. And like you said, you can find on the pewter, you can find this blog if you kind of want to dive more into the Fifth Nail blog.
And next week, I'm very excited because we are going to feature a case that has been heavily requested as of recent. So we want you to know we are listening, and we will be back here with you in the garage, my friends, next week.
Yeah, thank you, friends, for listening.
And until then, be good, be kind, and don't litter.
you can live out your MasterChef dreams when you find a professional on Angie to tackle your dream kitchen remodel. Connect with skilled professionals to get all your home projects done well. Inside to outside, repairs to renovations. Get started on the Angie app or visit Angie.com today. You can do this when you Angie that.